Welcome, everybody. Another edition of the Goldie on Ice podcast presented by the good folks at Amerant Bank. Go to amerantbank.com. Check out all that they have to offer, including the Panthers debit card. You may have seen the advertisements with Matthew Tkachuk on that. Speaking of Matthew Tkachuk, he and the Panthers, incredible. First team in 15 years in the NHL to go back-to-back as a conference champion and reach the Stanley Cup Final a year after losing in the Cup Final. It feels totally different than a year ago for this Panther team. And I think, number one, atop that different feeling list is the health of this team. They've got some time off. They are healthy. They are getting rest, as opposed to last year where they did have a lot of time off, but it still wasn't enough time to heal up broken bones and things like that. And this year's team has so much depth that the Panthers could easily, go 14, 15 forwards deep and really not have an issue. And that wasn't the case last year, especially when they lost Eetu Luostarinen and then later on Matthew Tkachuk being just a shell of himself. Same with Ekblad and Montour, and we know the whole history. And even then, with all that said, they came back home down 0-2. And they were pretty close to getting that series even at 2 games apiece. And Vegas ended up winning it in 5. The Panthers have been on a run through the Eastern Conference. Incredible. They've won like 24 out of 30 games in the Eastern Conference over the last 2 years since falling behind 3-1 in that first round against the Bruins. They absolutely, if not in series games played, because the Eastern Conference Final against the Rangers went 6 games. So dominated, if not in games played, then in overall play. I mean, high danger scoring chances. They allowed, 7 or 8 per game. Basically doubled that. Shots on goal, shot attempts. I mean, the Panthers seemingly against the Rangers had the puck the entire series. And it was impressive. A very different series than the one before against the Bruins, which was heavy hockey, as heavy as you could get. And I think they're going to see in this series against Edmonton more maybe of Tampa. Maybe that's, although Edmonton is much better defensively. Defensively, they're more like the Bruins. It is one of the more underrated parts of this Stanley Cup Final, how good Edmonton is 5-on-5 defensively, and that's understandable. Because they've got 2 of the best players in the world, McDavid and Draisaitl. So certainly the conversation is going to be on those guys. And, not everybody in the NHL that observes the league pays as much attention to the Western Conference. Everybody knows about Vegas, knows about Colorado, the recent Stanley Cup champions. And you've really got to watch the Edmonton Oilers play, I think, on a regular basis to realize that they're a very structured defensive team. So, in that sense, it's more like the Boston Bruins. The Rangers, if you take away their power play and their special teams, they were not a top 3, a top 5 team at 5-on-5, and the Panthers proved that. The one thing I'll say about this series is I don't believe, with all that said about Edmonton and their defense and the way they play D and that top pair with the young Bouchard, who's been amazing, and Mattias Ekholm, who's a veteran, big guy, he's been to the Cup Final before. The one thing I'll say about it is I don't think Edmonton has really faced a team that does what the Panthers do as well as they do it. Now, they beat Vancouver in the first round in 7 games, coming from behind to do it. And Vancouver does play a similar heavy game with, Rick Tocchet as the coach, and, Tocchet demands that from his team. So I do think Vancouver is the one similarity to the way the Panthers play. Certainly the last 2 games of the West Final, maybe they were out of gas, maybe a little bit tired. I mean, Dallas, it was almost disappointing to me, the lack of physicality they had, particularly in that Game 6, besides former Panther Mason Marchment. And like I said, maybe that was a product of, being a little bit tired, being an older team. But Dallas controlled play during that Game 6. Edmonton had 10 shots on goal in the clincher. I believe the fewest in a clinching game ever. But for the most part, they kept the Dallas Stars with their 30-plus shots and their puck possession on the outside. So the key for the Panthers, again, get to the net, take the eyes away from the goalies, get a few a game on Stuart Skinner, who is playing well. And you never know. Hey, look, guys can get red hot for a few weeks. Aiden Hill did last year for Vegas. But all things being equal, after facing Andrei Vasilevsky, Jeremy Swayman, and Igor Shesterkin, you would think the Panthers, if they can get to the net, which they do well, guys like Kachuk and Barkov, and certainly Reinhart with the deflections, and Verhaeghe's willing to get there, they should have success against Skinner. And at any point, you really don't know, if he's going to have some games where you get 4 or 5 on him. But say this, he's a high draft pick. He's a big goalie, and right now he's playing well. But again, I don't think he has been tested quite the way the Florida Panthers test goalies, get to the net, and I don't think Edmonton's defense has seen what the Panthers are going to bring. But it's definitely a different feeling from this Panther team. Sure, it's a sense of confidence and accomplishment, but not a very big sense of accomplishment. They've been talking since day one about going back and this time winning it. I do think the experience of a year ago will help. It's the first time in franchise history they will begin the Stanley Cup Final at home. Anyone can say whatever they want, but I do believe that the extra trip, especially as far as it is a little bit of a disadvantage for the team that's not at home. Because in general, home ice is meaningless in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Maybe it matters if you get to a Game 7, and if this does, the Panthers would have the Game 7 at home. But with Edmonton, going through this for the first time, that city being absolutely crazy right now, maybe a positive for them to actually get on the road. But, they're going to go through the media day. They're going to walk at Amerant Bank Arena. I'm not sure the Oilers, are aware it's going to be quite as nuts as it will be. I do think the Panthers have the advantage going into these first 2 home games. And as discussed, the last 3 series. Now, in the first series, they got it done. They won the first 2. Second series, they lost 1 but won 2. But then won 3 and 4 on the road to pretty much clinch the series, because I didn't think the Bruins were going to beat them 3 straight games. Same way Tampa couldn't beat them 4 out of 5. The Ranger one was different because they won Game 1, which gave them a huge leg up, but then lost the next 2. And then won 3 in a row. But I'll say the same thing on this series. And I thought the Panthers would beat Tampa in 6. I was a game over. Boston in 6 on the money. And Rangers in 7, a game over. I give Edmonton a couple of games in this series. I give them 6. But I do think if the Panthers can come out and jump on them, and maybe even before they can make any big adjustments, because they haven't seen a team like the Panthers, except Vancouver in that first round. If they can jump on them and get the 2 wins, you have to think it's inevitable. To put it in South Florida terms, as far as an analogy, the Panthers are like the Burmese python. They are so big, they are so tough, they are so nasty, you can't handle them, that it's inevitable if the python gets around something, that thing is finished. It may not be in 5 minutes, it may not be in 10 minutes, it may not be in an hour, but you're not getting out. And that's the way I feel about the way this Panther team has come together and the way it's playing right now. So, hey, we'll see. Like I said, don't underestimate the Oilers defensively, because they got the offense, and Connor McDavid is all world. The Panthers are going to have to be aware every time he's on the ice. With a 5-man unit, the good news is Paul Maurice has coached against them his entire career, and the Panthers have that monster down the middle with Barkov, Bennett, Lundell, and then Stenlund. And I do think that being at home and having that change, that last change to start the series, could benefit the Panthers. I thought by games 3 into 4, in all of these series, guys like Kucherov and Point and Panarin and Kreider and Zibanejad and Pasternak, I think they all were getting frustrated that there's no room out there. It's hard. it's mean, and it's nasty. Now, no disrespect to all those players, because you got MVP candidates and future Hall of Famers in there. I can tell you that. And some of the great offensive players in the league. McDavid is a different class, probably, than those guys. They're all in the ballpark, but McDavid's above them. So it's a bigger challenge for the Panthers. And he does have a whole country behind him as well. But again, you start digging into the depth and the goaltending. I mean, Sergei Bobrovsky's allowed 2 or less besides that Game 3 against the Rangers. And some of those were a little bit fluky. I agree he should have had a few more saves, but some were a little fluky, including the overtime, leaving Wenberg all alone in front, and then he changed direction off his body. Bobrovsky's allowed 2 goals or fewer in every game since Game 1 against Boston, with the exception of that one against the Rangers. So I give the Panthers the advantage going into the series. Listening to a lot of the national media, especially in Canada, a lot of them are giving the advantage to Edmonton. I really don't see, and I've been saying this all season, all things being equal, I don't think there's a team in the league that could beat the Panthers 4 out of 7. Now, I say all things being equal, barring, a 5-minute major during the game and a team scoring 3 times, an injury, a big one, a suspension. Even a goalie that gets red hot, I thought that could do it, but it didn't last series because Shesterkin was as good as you can be. And the Panthers still, were able to get about 3 a game on them. And get the big goals when they needed them, including some that just beat them clean on shots, like Kachuk in Game 1, Verhaeghe in Game 2, Bennett with the big one in Game 6. I mean, those were just clear-cut shots that the Panthers, found a way to get by him with some great shots. Lundell, although Tarasenko screened him on that game go-ahead goal, I should call it, in game number 5. So a lot's got to break right for someone to beat this team, for the opposition, 4 times out of 7. All right, we're going to have plenty more here on the Goldie on Ice podcast throughout the week into the series. I will be in Edmonton. We'll have guests for you, so please subscribe, spread the word. Once again, a big thank you to Amerant Bank for sponsoring not only the Goldie on Ice podcast, but all of my social media content as well. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, Goldie on Ice. I'll have the game day chats with all of you on the Panthers Instagram account, Instagram Live. Those are on every game day. So follow me on Twitter, and every game day we'll tweet out the times that we'll do that. And also a big shout out to JetBlue, providing me the transportation to and from New York City for that first round series against the Rangers. Or should I say third round series, Eastern Conference Final against the Rangers. Thanks to our producer, Brett Markowitz. We'll talk to you soon, everybody, here on the Goldie on Ice podcast. Enjoy the week. Enjoy the time. These things do not come around very often.